Welcome to the presentation on synthesis.
The synthesis approach is discussed in Chapter 12 of How to Write Anything. Now that chapter has more to do with a synthesis paper, which is a style of paper to make. And I know some of my students take Writing 1 classes in which the instructor has them do synthesis papers. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Different semesters have different projects sometimes for me. But for those of you who have done a synthesis paper already, then you probably have a pretty good handle on these strategies if you've done pretty well with that paper. Others, this is going to be fairly new. So you'll want to go through this presentation and pick up some new strategies and skills. Well, the research paper for Writing 2 is not specifically and directly a synthesis paper. I do hope you'll use a strategy, and using this strategy will definitely help you improve your grade and make your paper more sophisticated. And it's a good strategy to use in some of your other class papers, especially as you get further along in your academic career. So what does it mean to synthesize in your paper? Well, it has to do with how you use your sources, and here's a quick, nice definition out of our Ruskowitz book. Examining several sources there, in the brackets means, those are my words added. You're examining several sources and then describing the relationships between them, and there are some words that you can include in that. But that's basically it. You're using different sources and combining their ideas, working their ideas against each other, developing ideas based on what different pieces of those ideas bring to you, and moving forward with your own ideas as a result of that. When we use the synthesis technique then, one of the main approaches we'll want to use is to show relationships between sources. And one way to think about this is that your sources are in a conversation with each other. So for example, you have several experts on a subject, and maybe they're at a panel if you want to imagine it in your mind, or maybe they're just writing to the same journal. And this actually happens, is we'll have journals publish different pieces and articles by different authors on the same topic, and sometimes they're directly responding to each other. And sometimes this plays out in a journal over the course of several years. I know in journals that I read with English-related content and how to do certain techniques and strategies for writing one and theories and all that. This will happen is over the course of several years, you'll have a number of experts kind of in conversation with each other. So this actually happens. Sometimes you're going to have to kind of think about it happening and pretend it is happening. But when you're writing, you are narrating that conversation, and you're sort of explaining things, and you're developing your own ideas and bringing in different pieces from different writers to help support your idea, but you're also building on them and kind of having them in conversation with each other. The word that you want to think about here is discourse, and that's probably a new word for you, but that's sort of the word that we use for these conversations and discussions about academic and other topics, is the word discourse. Skilled writers then can use synthesis in a number of ways to really build ideas and move a paper forward. And again, look at your How to Write Anything book for some more explanations on this. But by looking for connections between sources and figuring out, okay, this person writes about this and this person writes about this other aspect of something, if we start reading our articles and books and other sources more critically, we're going to start noticing these things. And sometimes you're going to notice that they disagree with each other. That's pretty common, and that's how we move ideas forward, is by having some disagreements. And kind of within different fields, you're going to see that. Again, within writing, first year writing, there are a lot of disagreements about the best ways to do things. Another thing you should do is sometimes you got to keep in mind that you are yourself very new to this field, and sometimes we need a little bit more confidence, but sometimes we need to remember that we are not experts on things. And I won't go off on too much of a tangent, but sometimes the modern media and social media and the way things work is everybody thinks he or she is an expert on everything. And I see one article or one meme on Facebook, and suddenly I'm a medical expert on this thing, or suddenly I'm an expert on this disease, or suddenly I'm an expert on this political topic. And I haven't read anything. I don't know any theories. I don't actually know the history other than the couple of little internet articles I've read, but by God, I'm an expert on this. And, that's a pain. Take some humility, learn your place within academia, and that doesn't mean your place is as a nothing. You are part of the conversation now. You are a college student, and you have a good voice to say. But as you're writing your paper, you want to show how some of the experts are addressing this, and these are going to help you form some of your own ideas and support your own ideas. And sometimes part of that is showing how an overall idea or a concept that we're working with and that you're going to work with has been built up over a matter of time, and how different philosophers or thinkers or theorists have contributed to that. And that may be a major part of your paper. And again, some of you in the fields that you're getting into, that's definitely going to be a big part of what you do. So I recommend, trying it out in this community needs paper. Another strategy that you want to do is, don't be afraid to bring in things that challenge your own ideas and challenge your own thesis. Because again, a good academic writer is not afraid to be challenged and actually will address some of those challenges. So these are some different ways to use synthesis. To help us better understand these ideas and how to use some synthesis strategy, I'm going to take us through a couple of quick examples that would relate directly to this paper that we're writing. And your topic probably isn't this topic, but you can apply the same ideas. So here's example one, and I'm just going to read this so that I know sometimes in these slides where there's a lot of print, it's hard to follow along. So you can try to follow along, and I'm just going to read this word by word. So you're writing a community needs paper about child obesity in whatever county, Indiana. You explain that some health professionals believe the problem stems from reduced exercise and increased consumption of sugary sodas and snacks, bringing in quotes and paraphrases from a credible expert or two. You then continue explaining that this has led some schools to ban certain beverages and snacks, again bringing in quotes and paraphrases to show how some credible authorities support these measures. You also bring in a credible source or two who see these rules as unnecessary. At this point, you may not have even brought in anything specific to X county yet, but you've reached your turning point. Now that you've placed yourself and your readers within the conversation, you can apply these ideas to X county, exploring what local schools should do. Ban certain beverages and snacks, increase required physical activity at school, subsidize sports involvement for poor and underprivileged kids who, as statistics show, are more likely to suffer from poor nutrition and obesity. Other ideas you've come up with? So now that I've read example one, again, hopefully you can see in there how by bringing in different pieces of research and different experts, you're showing how they maybe agree and disagree with each other, or how one idea builds on top of another, and that's going to lead you to apply these ideas more directly to your specific county. Here's another example related more to our literature classes, and a lot of students wind up taking literature classes around or just after the time they take writing too, so I'm including this because I think it's helpful. So again, I'll just sort of read it for you and then we'll have a quick discussion after it. You're writing a paper for your lit class. You bring in one source that explains how the author uses symbolism to push a certain theme, and then you bring in an author who explores a particular part of the story to illustrate that theme. You then bring in another author who has other comments about the story that you can show as supporting, developing, challenging, or complicating the other source's ideas. As you bring in the sources, you explain how their ideas relate to and build on each other's ideas and claims. At some point, you start delivering your own interpretation, argument, and observations related to what the authors are saying. And remember, though, that your paper needs to still be centered around ideas rather than just reviewing sources, unless the assignment is specifically supposed to be just a sources review, which there are some assignments like that. So, again, hopefully what's getting through here for you is that you can bring in these different pieces of research, and rather than just stacking them on top of each other to show, hey, I did research, you're sort of narrating through them, you're working through them, and you're showing how they relate to each other, how they're connected, how they build on each other's ideas, and wind up supporting your ideas. And again, you can bring in your ideas more later or start off with your own ideas and then sort of build with these along the way. There are different strategies to this that we've learned in other presentations in Writing 1 and Writing 2. I highly recommend that if you haven't already, you look through the example in Chapter 12 of our How to Write Anything book. And what they've done is they've given you a model where first they include the different pieces of the sources that the young author and writer is using here. And so you can kind of look through and see they've even highlighted the parts that the author ends up using. And then they have the actual paper that someone has written to do synthesis and kind of gather these sources to bring these ideas and show how they relate and connect to each other. Again, the page numbers are on the slide. I highly recommend you look through there if you haven't already, and hopefully it's helpful for you. And you can see how you would use that as a strategy for part of your research paper in this class. Thanks again for your attention during this presentation and all your hard work in this class. Make sure that you go take quizzes over what we've covered in this lesson and during this unit. And again, good luck working on your research paper. I'm always happy to help you if you contact me, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.